Welcome and thanks for joining today's IFCN webinar, Market Intelligence in Challenging Times. Today's webinar aims at providing information to everybody who has an interest in the dairy world and maybe wants to join the IFCN network for additional insights. We have been running this public webinar series in parallel to our exclusive partner-only series. Still have gotten quite some good feedback on this, and we hope that you will also find value in participating today. We will go ahead and answer most of the questions that we have received during the registration sent in by you, so thank you for this. And Milica is the person who has prepared everything. So Milica is a content expert at IFCN. Hey Milica, how are you?
Hello, Veit. I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to your presentation today. And my name is Veit Becker. I'm the marketing lead at IFCN. So I will try not to give you as much marketing as I'm supposed to, I guess. But what I will do is go ahead, talk about how we will approach today's webinar. So I will just have a quick rundown of IFCN and our services for you. Then Milica will start taking a look at different aspects of your questions. And this is something that I have also learned this morning. So your questions are kind of woven into the presentation that Milica is having. So at the end, there is a Q&A session. Let me point this out first. At the end, there is a Q&A session, and there Milica will say, yes, I will try to answer this question during my presentation before. If you think that there is something missing, please go ahead, use the Q&A tool. So we are looking forward to some engagement. But what we will be looking at is the dairy production in developed countries and kind of contrast it with the dairy production in emerging countries. Also, we have our brand new top 20 dairy processors report out, where we will also be looking at the implications of these companies' actions on the planet, the people living on this planet, and of course, the profits that they are making on the way. We have a special chapter devoted to farm analysis and comparison because that's something that people are interested in. And then the monthly real-time data outlook. So where is the milk price right now, the world milk price, and where do the markets expect it to go? Then there will be the Q&A session before we wrap it up. For those of you who have not participated yet in one of our webinars, you do not have to take notes. We always send out the recordings following the event to everybody who participated. So if you're here right now, you will be getting the video recording and the slides later on. If you have any questions, please go ahead, use the Q&A tool. You can also use the chat to post questions, but I suppose using the Q&A tool is more transparent for us and helps us to keep everything streamlined. If you just want to say hi, please go ahead and use the chat. And now let's go ahead and start with the agenda. So for those of you who are completely new to IFCN, we represent the International Farm Comparison Network, producing primary data, sharing this information with all the members in the network. We used to have a focus on research only, and this is a picture of our research partners at the last in-person meeting that we had 2019. But with all the positive feedback and encouraging feedback that we've got from our partners in the business world, we decided to change our mission in the company. And our mission is now helping people in the dairy world make better decisions. And this is a photo of the team here in Kiel, Germany. And overall, this approach has made us the leading provider of dairy economic data analysis and insights with the strict focus on dairy. So what's so special about IFCN is, so the recipe for success here is that we are connecting data and people. We have a global holistic perspective on the dairy market, and we do it by partnering with dairy researchers and dairy companies across the globe. Overall, right now, we are covering 98% of the world's milk supply. So you can be sure that this information will be the best that we can provide to you, considering the fact that our researcher partners, and here you can see the growth of the researcher networks, are constantly double checking and making sure that the data that we are providing to our partners is correct. With 20 years of experience, we have received quite a lot of positive feedback from our partners. Our data is generally correct, unbiased, consistent, up to date with a long history, and we also have the global coverage with common standards. And this has led to the situation that many big companies in the dairy world are already using IFCN as one building block in their market intelligence activities. So here you see the different stages in the dairy supply chain where we are supporting these companies. We do not show on this slide the different projects we are currently having with the United Nations, with the World Bank, and for example, with the EU Commission. But I don't want to talk too much about marketing. I just want to bring it to the point. The value for your company is that we provide the global holistic picture of the dairy world. You should not get disrupted with the IFCN data we can provide. Milica will give you some examples of this later. Also, we allow you to be networking with your peers, with the companies in the supply chain of the dairy supply chain. And definitely you can upgrade your market intelligence with better dairy data and knowledge. And right now, Milica, I think we can start with the core of today's webinar.
Yes, thank you, Fahd, for this introduction. And yes, I would like to share a few points definitely with people who are joining us today. The topic was market intelligence in challenging times. And not only that this year was challenging, but the dairy is facing challenges all the time. And the question is how to start digging out on this. And what we do in IFCN is, of course, with the data. We use the data for strategic and for operational planning. So you mentioned our agenda. I'm going to go through some of our data. How can we use them? How can we answer the questions? Some general questions in the dairy sector, but also some questions that were coming in together with registrations, as you mentioned. So starting with dairy production, what we do in IFCN is every year we publish a book, which is called a Dairy Report, which has an analysis of farm economics and sustainability on a micro level, but also the global dairy sector analysis with country profiles of more than 120 countries and the world map. So once you open this dairy report, there are many facts that you can read. One of the facts that I want to present today shortly is that 60% of world milk production is delivered to dairies. This means what you see on this picture, on this map, are all the countries that produce milk. The size of a bubble is a milk production. And then this dark orange area is how much of milk is delivered to processors. Since we're comparing this among all the countries in the world, it's very important to be standardized in order to be comparable. And this is something that we in IFCN really look to. So what we see here is a solid corrected milk. It is standardized at 4% fat and 3.3% protein. And in this unit, in 2019, in total, 850.5 million tons of milk were produced coming from dairy cows and buffaloes. And in countries like US, almost all milk is delivered to dairies, in Europe as well. But if we go a little bit to Asia, in countries like India, China, and Pakistan, even though they produce 1/3 of the world volume, they only deliver 35% of that milk. So extremely important is to capture the milk that is going on informal market, how we call it, and it is also consumed on a household level and on a farm. And once we talk about the production in different countries, we offer country pages like this one. I took example of the France as one of the largest milk producers. And each year we are publishing the dairy report, but the country pages look a little bit different. On the right side, you see the country page that was published in 2019, when more focus was on the farm structure, while in 2020, which is even year, we focused more on the milk processing. So even if you look back and you are interested in buying their report, but you're interested in the different data, also their reports from past years are available. One thing that I want to point out on these country pages are exactly these pictures. And in this picture, you see Jean-Marc, who is our researcher in France. Veit mentioned that very well. So our network of researchers actually validate, they confirm the data that are in the country that we get and say why are developments like that. So this is what I find really valuable, especially as a data person, not only into looking the numbers, but to actually hear the stories from the countries, from their experts. So first part of a country page is a general status and the developments in the countries. We see how high is the milk production, how high is consumption, and in case of France, we see a surplus of around 5 million tons, which means that France is a dairy exporter. Together with the net trade balance, they're exporting a lot of dry products, cheese, and fresh products as well. And then we move to the data. With the data set since 1996, when we started collecting the data, until the current year. We see that the production in France is quite stable, but there were some dairy movements. First, we see that there are fewer cows every year in France, and the milk production is stable thanks to increasing milk yield per cow, which means that the country like France, dairy developed countries, are focusing on more efficient milk production rather than expanding farms. This is in a relation with what is happening on emerging dairy markets, where first they grow with a number of farms, with a number of cows, and then they start focusing on efficiency of cows, on increasing milk yield. And then after that, there is a second step, which is called consolidation, when the smaller farms are either growing or going out of the business, and larger farms are growing even larger. And further on, when we talk about the dairy consumption, France is, of course, consuming a lot of dairy, a lot of cheese especially. And if you look into the dairy chain, it is important, as I mentioned, what milk is being delivered and what is going on a farm level or on informal market, which in case of France is not that big, but it is quite relevant for some other countries. And then we move what to do with this data. And that is that our partners are having this data also in an Excel database. And annually, we also publish the product with additional service, not only with this data, but also with the long-term dairy outlook on the production, on number of cows, number of farms, etc. Well, beside the production, price is important, which we monitor on annual basis for all countries in our database. And also, what is the relation between the consumer price and the farm gate milk price? What is the processing profile of the country? With the France, around 50% is being produced as cheese. And who is producing this? We have the list for all countries in Dairy Report, top 10 dairy processors in the country. So this would be a brief explanation of what is a dairy report, what can you do, and which questions you can answer with this.
Yes, thank you for this, Milica. So let me just provide a quick overview of the book as a whole. So 2020, we have 123 country profiles included, but farm sustainability covering 52 countries. And as of today, we have a 24-year time series. So the cost comparison of the typical farms, of the monitoring of the dairy economic indicators, I think we will get into that. But the dairy report itself is the most basic building block of the dairy economic data that IFCN can provide. So Milica just presented the country pages, and we can now go ahead and take a look at a different type of report.
And this different type of report is exactly talking about the processing of milk. So since 2009, IFCN is having a research on top 20 dairy processors around the globe. This year, we compiled this list once again, and we came to a conclusion that 25% of global milk production is produced by, or processed by these companies, with a stable market share of 42%. And this 42% is out of the amount that is being delivered. But not only that this list is important per se, it is important to expand this research. And we did this this year, and that is how these top 20 processors are contributing to people, to planet, and also to their profit. So how are they sustainable in that way? When it comes to people, it is important to notice how do they contribute to consumers, and more than 1 billion people is served annually by these 20 companies. How do they contribute to their employees, to farmers, and to other stakeholders? So all these indicators are inside of this this list and the report that was compiled after that. So second point would be contribution to planet. And 100% of these top 20 companies address the issue of sustainability. And half of them already started developing the strategy how to reduce greenhouse gases emission until 2050. And of course, third part is a profit. And one fact coming from this is that 8% is average EBITDA margin for all these companies. So these are a few indicators coming from these top 20 companies that we made into one big dairy processors report. Vahid, can you say more about it?
Yeah, so the top 20 processors list has been published and is public for many years now. This year we have done the step to add these additional analysis about the profits and the sustainability goals of these companies, which was also quite, let's say, a little bit nerve-wracking for those people who were involved in the process. Again, we did come back with all the analysis and research results that we had to the processors and asked them for their feedback, and they said if this is correct or not. One quick anecdote here, sometimes we were asked to change the numbers, but the numbers that are inside this report are based on official publications. So this is something that we stick to. And in general, this report has received very good, let's say, feedback. If you are working for a dairy processor and are, for example, looking towards benchmarking your own company against these top 20, or if you would like to be included in next year's benchmark, then please feel free to reach out and we will definitely get back to you. And now back to Milica.
Thanks. So yes, the processor report was a challenge, but I think it was really important, really great, because it shows the importance of these companies. And as you mentioned, you can benchmark also yourself within them. So doesn't matter if you're a big company or a small company. Once you have a comparable data per unit of a kilogram of milk, it's possible to do it as well. And this is also related to something that we are doing since 20 years, but it is on a farm level. So this is the next topic that I want to cover, that is farm analysis and comparison. And we in IFCN want to capture every farm that is out there in the world. And that is 112 million dairy farms worldwide. So even if the farm has only one cow, which we call as household, we want to capture that and to know that there is that farm. But of course, it is important to know how big are those farms. And this is what we do with our farm structure data, where we have a different size classes, starting with a small size class, which has 1 to 2 cows per farm, and then going also to farms that have more than 1,000 cows. And we see two charts. First chart is world dairy farms in percentage per size class. And the second one is world dairy farm animals in a percentage. So in blue, those are small farms, and there are more than 100 million of them. We call them household farms. but they also produce one amount of milk that is 37% of the total milk. Most of it is going to household use and also informal market, especially imported in countries like India, Pakistan. Then the second, green ones, that have 10 to 30 and 30 to 100 cows are what we call family farms. They produce around 20% of the total milk, and they are a backbone of a dairy, especially in Europe and in countries like Brazil, for example. All other farms that develop with above 100 cows, and there are more than 200,000 of them, we call business farm, and they do produce the most of the world milk. What we do with this information and why it's important to share with other people in their industry can be important for companies like farm input companies to know who are your customers, who are your farmers, and how big are their farms, and how are these farms going to develop. And for milk processors, of course, who is your supplier. And to know further on what is happening on the farm, we really go into details with our farm analysis. We're taking data on over 170 typical farms in more than 50 countries. And on this map, you have countries in orange, which are the countries where we analyze typical farms. And we tend to have at least two farms, one which represent average farm size and one that represent large size farm. But if the country, especially typical dairy countries that have more dairy regions, we tend to have also farms in those regions because they don't have always similar farming systems. So with this farm analysis, since 20 years, as I mentioned, we are capturing farm economics, different farming system, various farm data like the breed or milking system, the intensity level on a farm, what are the costs of milk production, what are returns, and of course, sustainability. And again, here we are using standardization and we are using per unit so that these data are comparable. And this is what you can see shows in this chart. There are two charts with costs of milk production only in 6 different countries and their developments since 2000. So we see that the costs rise in very different speed and different patterns. And we see and we can compare their competitiveness. Countries like New Zealand, which has a pasture farming system, very low labor input, has also a lower cost per 100 kilograms of solid corrected milk compared to the countries like US or Germany who have intensive system. Also, we see that, for example, China has really high costs, and this is coming from the feed. And that is one more component of a cost that we monitor beside the land or animal health or different things. We use this data with our partners to benchmark these typical farms, to benchmark different farms within them in the countries to see what is the effect on the milk production. For a what-if analysis, we do projects with many companies, especially when one idea can be to monitor if you're a farm input company and then how is the farm developing once they are using your product or without it. And since the data are comparable, it's easy to see the effect of that. And once we collect the data on the farm level, we can address sustainability issues, similar like what was done with the processors in a processors report. We can do that also on a farm level with the different types of sustainability. First one, of course, economic sustainability with the farm income. Does the farm have enough money to continue their business in 1 year, in 5 or 10 years? What is environmental sustainability with the carbon footprint, water footprint as well? Because 1 kilogram of milk produced in a country like Germany doesn't emit same amount of greenhouse gases like the farm or the cow that is somewhere else on those small farms like in India or Bangladesh. Social sustainability in those countries that, like I mentioned, in emerging dairy markets, is much more important, and that is what is farm labor income, and can a farm support the livelihood of the family. And the second one is also resilience with the financial performance. So from the farm level, we of course come to a dairy sector, and from annual data, we come more closer to a monthly data, which was really great tool to see, especially this year when it was challenging and volatile. Fight, we got a lot of questions about the COVID-19 impact. Is that right?
This is definitely true. And of course, this has been one of the major topics that we have been talking about throughout the year, that we have been analyzing throughout the year. I think the first results came in at this year's dairy conference where our researchers gathered. I think it was in late May. And this was the first time that we saw, okay, at the moment, COVID-19 impact has, let's say, is not as big as expected. We did share the, let's say, some of these results publicly, and everything else was pretty much a partner only. But I guess from there, it all kept going this way. And I think I would like to make a few comments while you are presenting, Milica. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sure. So yes, exactly. First time that we discussed with a lot of people was on a dairy conference, but also before we were in a constant contact with our partners, both researchers and the companies as well,
Yes.
to see how they are doing. And two main indicators are production and price, of course. So what was happening with the milk production? On this chart, you see change in the world milk production since 2007. And milk production this year wasn't that bad. So at the moment, it is monitored for 65 countries, and this covers 92% of world milk production. So all countries that are relevant for a dairy industry and that make an impact, that are game changers, are covered with this analysis. And so far, milk production growth, excluding India and Pakistan, is 1.4 compared to 1%, which was in 2019, which was quite low growth. And there are different, of course, developments across different regions. Some of main exporting regions that I'm going to mention, like European Union, slowed down their production growth, but they had stable exports, also kind of stable prices. With regional differences, some countries that are main dairy producers like Germany, France, Netherlands had even negative production growth because of a weather impact and the drought, and especially the heat wave, compared to Eastern Europe, like a country like Poland, which had quite a good and a positive growth. New Zealand, which is now slowing down in their seasonal production, in November, they had even a negative production growth. So they started really good season in August with plus 5%, and now they have even negative growth. This might be the impact of La Nina, which is currently occurring, which also had an impact on Latin American production. But luckily, rains came, and this is going to have a positive impact on both milk production and also crop production, which is important for feed. In US, the US was quite interesting to look at. They tried to slow down their milk production because, especially in May, price was going more than minus 15% compared to beginning of the year. So farmers tend to cut their production more with the feed ratio or with fewer milkings per day so that they can quickly recover that production. And this is exactly what happened. In November, their production grew even by plus 2.7%. And this is supported later by a high farm gate milk price, especially pushed by a higher demand that was coming from government purchases. So many factors are impacting milk production, and we're looking into that. Milk price, of course, feed price, which is now going high because there is a higher demand and the yields and harvest was a little bit lower this year. And this is putting pressure on the margin over compound feed cost that we saw that when this tends to be lower, farmers tend to cut their production. Weather events, very important if there are droughts or floods, not only impact on the feed, but also impact on the cow stress. And in the past, there were also some policy changes that also had an impact on the milk production. So overall, COVID-19 it made a lot of fear, but at the end, this year wasn't that bad at all in terms of production. On the price side, this is what we used. On this chart, you have IFCN World Milk Price Indicator. So if you can think that there would be a price for fluid milk on a world market, this is what it would be like. So this is based on dairy commodities from Oceania. And this year, it is on average of 36.4 US dollars. So quite normal year. Since 3 years, the price is going around this level. And since the beginning of the year, we started the year high and then we went down, but now we are stabilizing around 35 US dollars. Fai, do you have a comment?
Yes, I just want to add something. I think you said that the IFCN World Milk Price is based on the futures prices from Oceania.
No, not the future prices, but commodity prices.
Yes, and also the prices from US and Europe, right?
No, the IFCN World Milk Price Indicator is based only on Oceanian price because Oceania is exporting the most of their milk produced, so they have to act competitive, and that is what the world price is compared to US or Europe, where also one amount of milk production is consumed in the region, in the country. So that's why we tend to look more into Oceanian price so that we see the world price and the competitiveness on that level.
Well, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, so this is the status. Good that we clarified this, how we calculate it as well. And now what to expect in next month and the next year as well. We are taking a look into current dairy futures. We are looking into futures on New Zealand exchange market, on Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and European Energy Exchange. And in normal years, when the prices are aligned, these exchanges are also quite aligned. This year, that wasn't the case, and that's why we had these kind of webinars every month and even every week once the COVID-19 epidemic started all across the globe and the big dairy countries. And now we see that they show the trend up towards 37 to 39 US dollars by the end of 2021, with the New Zealand quite higher than US or Europe in next 2 or 3 months. And this is coming mostly because there is still a good demand, especially for New Zealand products, while, as I mentioned, the production there was a negative in November. Besides that, we are making our own short-term forecast for a price. Together, we compare that with other analysts, what they are saying, and they have all increased the forecast for next 12 months. They also tend to see that 2021 is going to be weak in Q1, but then going upwards until the end of a year. And this is also similar to IFCN. So we have probably all different methods, but the conclusion is similar. So in Q1 in 2021, we expect price around 33 US dollars, moving to 35 US dollars. Few things to look at. That is the production that can be impacted with the high feed prices at the moment, but also what is happening with the demand. Economists are expecting GDP rebound in 2021, and this may drive a milk demand, but the milk demand was strong this year, more than we actually expected. And now the question is, if this demand for commodities was going directly to end consumers and being demanded, or it went to the stocks. So this is going to quite drive the prices in the next few months.
Yes, thank you for preparing this presentation and also for integrating some of the questions. Right now, I can see we have not received any live questions today. So maybe we can take a look at the questions that you have already tried to answer with the general presentation here.
Yes, as you said, there were some questions. The questions like the production costs of raw milk, definitely something that we can answer with our farm analysis. The profitability of dairy processing industry that I have mentioned with EBITDA of 8% on average for top 20 countries, and more indicators on that available in our dairy processing report. Impacts of market dynamics, and of course, a dairy market at the moment, impact of COVID-19, production, price, and demand.
Yes, I remember that the question about the profitability of the dairy processors was about how to go about calculating this profitability. I think we used the EBITDA margin as the key indicator for this. And also, I mean, we did take the time to access also the, let's say, information about non-public dairy processors, but this is something that our specialist here, Mr. Eric Elgersma, did, and he's also offering training courses, which we can get to later. Yeah. And yes, regarding the dairy market impact of COVID-19, this is, of course, a story that was really hot throughout the whole year. I have to say that also IFCN in the role as an analysis, so if I put on our analysis hat, we were also expecting a lot worse, and we were looking forward to a roller coaster scenario. This was pretty much in line also with other analysis like StoneX, previously FC Stone, also with Rabobank. And what's important here is that we always had the data and we always had contact with the researchers in, let's say, all the countries across the globe, but they said it's not happening yet. It has not happened. Maybe we are already past the situation, and we kept sharing this information with a certain outlook. I guess this is psychological, since we are not computers saying, yeah, okay. I mean, there are correlations from the past that would say we are in for quite a roller coaster ride regarding prices. It just did not happen. And this is definitely interesting to see how this can be resolved. Okay, Milica, what else do we have?
Thanks. So next group of questions was there that I tried partially to answer, but they are quite complex for this short time, how much the presentation takes place. But it can be further definitely covered by IFCN. Like impact of the climate change on the supply of milk on the world market. I mentioned monthly milk production data. What is the impact of the weather? What we see that there are reoccurring droughts in some regions. Also, one partner, for example, from Africa said we had really severe droughts every 10 years. Now it's every second year or every year. So this can be the impact of a climate change, and this is what we can monitor with this. But we have to think also the other way, and that is that dairy industry is also changing and adapting. So there are new technologies that are definitely going to drive dairy industry in the next 5 and 10 years. So we have more cooling systems in the barns. This is what is adapting, so that also cows have less of a heat stress. So together with the climate changes, the industry also evolves so that milk supply wouldn't be that much under the pressure. Then we had another question like European Union Common Agricultural Policy and some changes there as a threat to dairy farms in European Union countries. And I have to say we're still waiting for a final decision. This was not signed with all countries. But what we need to know about the dairy farms in Europe is that there are fewer farms every year. In Germany, we lose 7% of farms every year because a lot of pressure is put there. The costs are high, especially if you want to go with the environmental regulations that's pushing even more costs, and you need subsidies also for that. So this is what farmers have to look forward, and this is what we need to monitor and to see which part of a farm is vulnerable to this. And this is exactly what we try to capture with our typical farms. Then there were some more questions on the challenges for a dairy sector. This is what I mentioned, and this goes together with achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. There are different types of sustainability, and different countries are focusing on a different sustainability. Environmental sustainability is important and talked a lot about in Western Europe, but for emerging markets, it's more important economic sustainability of the farm, and especially social sustainability of a farm. So these are all questions that are also challenges, and data are crucial for that so that we can find the answer and provide that.
Exactly. So we pretty much focus on providing the data. This is at the core. Of course, we do analysis and consultancy. This consultancy and analysis is, in general, it's always based on the data. This is where we are the best at, and we use this as the stepping stone, as the foundation. And we do have a question about this data. Roberto is asking about if you could repeat the explanation for the average world milk price that we use here at IFCN.
Yes, of course. So we know that there are many dairy commodities, and we tend to look into 5 main dairy commodities: cheese, butter, skim milk powder, whole milk powder, and whey, and to translate them to a world milk price indicator. So basically, what would be the price of a raw milk in that commodity price? And that is how we have this indicator that is at the moment around 36.4 US dollars. So it's a theoretical price, but very good tool to predict the price developments also for other commodities. So if you can imagine that the world would be a farm, this is the price that farmer would get.
Okay, thank you, Melissa, for this. And as there are no more questions, I guess I would ask you to forward to the next slide real quick.
Yes.
And we are coming closer to the end of today's webinar, and I just want to point out a little, let's say, something about the way how IFCN is offering the product. So on the one side, you can become a full-fledged member, supporter partner. This membership package is maybe the most easy way to cover your regular needs of dairy market intelligence, data, and insights, because, for example, we are running partner-only webinars where we share all the information only with the members inside the network. Also, of course, you will also always get the dairy report. You will always get access to the dairy report database, which is something that is very special and not available for non-partners. And on the other side, there are these standalone products and services that are available. So if you just want to have a report or want to do a project, trainings and workshops together, this can always happen. So if we are going ahead, the question is, how can we help you the best? Usually it is about you telling us how we can do this. And from there, on the next slide, we can see an overview of the member services. So of course, it's the dairy report as the basic building block. It's the supporter conference, which we dubbed the think tank conference, because almost every important dairy company is participating here. We are all discussing about the impacts on the future of dairy. We have the dairy data services, which also Melissa already pointed out are available online. We have these exclusive webinars with month-to-monthly updates and also newsletters, which are most often more important for managers because they have a really high level view on the current developments of the market. There is also a hotline. So when people say, yes, I have an important presentation tomorrow, can you please provide me some insights about this specialty in your data? We will always get back to you right away. And of course, there is the full access to more of the IFCN materials. Going on and taking a look at the standalone services here, you can see that the annual dairy report is available as a standalone product. We also offer previous versions since it makes sense to have 2 years in a row together. There's the IFCN processor report is also available as standalone. We have started to offer at least some of our data services independent from the full membership package. And we can always do projects together to fill your knowledge gaps in specific areas or do trainings and workshops. And I would like to talk about the trainings and workshops real quick. Here you can see an overview slide of our market intelligence training. And this training is facilitated by IFCN, but the trainer is a very respected man from the dairy industry. It's Eric Elgersma, who has been head of strategy and analysis at Friesland Campina for many years. And during a 2 days training, we are talking about how you create a process in your company that will support management to make the right decisions based on the data available. And this will pretty much empower you and your team, your management, to go beyond the consultants and analysts forecasts, but to use the data that you have available in your company to make the right decisions when needed. These events are now online. You can easily join and then participate there. So it will also be safe to join. And if you're interested, you can definitely leave us some feedback about this. So coming to the end, I would ask you to give us some feedback to Milica, the way how she presented. Also, I was answering the question today, how what you feel about the quality of the presentation, if you had any issues, and if there is something that you would like to get in contact with us. I will just leave the poll open and start wrapping up. So first of all, thank you for joining. Thank you for staying with us for the whole time. Thanks to Milica for preparing the answers to your questions and presenting all these different aspects about the questions that we have received. If you have enjoyed the webinar, it's maybe a good idea to follow IFCN on LinkedIn, where we usually share the public information from our partner on the events. And finally, I would say, please, everybody, stay healthy. I hope that you and your family are all right, and that this will sooner or later will all be over. Yeah, that's it pretty much today. Milica, do you have anything to add?
Yes, everybody, thanks for joining. I hope this was useful. I hope we will see each other at least in a virtual way in webinars, and everybody stay safe and all the best.
Yes. The Christmas slide. Yeah, so warm seasonal greetings to everybody. I hope this will be a great ending of the year. Have a good start into the next one. And that's it for today. So goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. And looking forward to see you soon.
Goodbye.